All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for your patience there at the beginning. Welcome to the June 18th meeting of the Trinidad Planning Commission. We will begin with a roll call.
Commissioner R.S. Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Hageman.
Here.
Commissioner Cole.
Here.
Commissioner Johnson.
I'm RS, sorry, I'm here.
All right, we have two sets of minutes to be approved. The first ones are from the March 19th meeting, which I was not present for, and Commissioner Slay, so I'll be abstaining. But for those of you that were here, any changes to these?
I could ask for a clarification. For the March 19th minutes, page 2 of 7, the second full paragraph down there that starts Parker also noted. There's a sentence that says, "While the applicant's lies within 500 feet of property owned by me, it is greater than 500 feet from my house." I think I understand what that is, but could you clarify that?
Yeah, I think it's that the lot line is
That's what we're trying to say.
500 feet, but the house is not.
And we're making that distinction because
I think it's just showing that it's on that edge. You know, it's not really that.
that close to the edge is what you're saying. Okay. Thank you.
Changes, saying other. Maybe I'll make a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second. All's in favor?
Aye.
And I'll abstain. All right, then we have the May 21st minutes to approve. Any changes, questions, clarifications from the commissioners? I did not have any. All right, move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, passes unanimous. Now tonight's agenda. Any changes anybody on the commission would like to see made tonight's agenda? Any changes from the public that they'd like to see in tonight's agenda? All right, seeing none, motion to approve.
Approved.
All right, second, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, passes unanimous. All right, now we go on to items from the floor. I think all of us were here recently, but just as a reminder, if there's anybody new in the room, this is an opportunity for you to speak or online to anything that's not on tonight's agenda. If there's something agendized, the appropriate time will be to speak at that point in time. So anything for items from the floor from anybody? Please, oh, please go ahead. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please go to the podium and just we'd love to hear your name and what you'd like to share with us.
Leslie Shorty, I'm the Yurok Tribe Housing Commissioner, and I'm addressing, I guess, items from the floor. And on the agenda, Housing Authority, this development permit. So I just wanted to share that I am a Yurok tribal member, and I'm also a daughter of a veteran who received a scholarship from BYU. Sorry.
Apologies.
I'm just kind of painting a picture.
No, I understand. I just wanted to.
Time from the last meeting, I heard that there was some systematic racism going on. So I just wanted to paint a picture of what a Yurok member may look like. And that's me.
Okay.
I'm a mother of 4. I've been with my husband for 30 years. I'm a college graduate. I'm a volunteer for the Red Cross, volunteer for the National Alliance of Mental Illness, Family Support Group, facilitator. I'm a facilitator for mourning and grieving family members. I've worked in grants and budgets and youth for over 20 years. So I'm also a knowledge keeper of the term systematic racism, which is not allowing or supporting a group of a specific ethnic to keep housing. I'd like that to go on the record. Again, my name is Bessie Shorty, and I'm a Yurok Tribe Housing Authority Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other items? Floor. None, we'll bring it back and move on to our agenda items. Agenda item number 1. The Richard, Trevor, please go ahead.
So I put this one first here because I think this should be a fairly straightforward project. Really minimal changes. The applicant is proposing to make a detached storage area into official living space as part of the residential floor area. This space it's detached from the house, but attached to the garage. They're really two separate structures but attached. The space has been partially converted in the past, so sort of incrementally. So it already has a partial kitchen that would meet the city's definition of a wet bar. And it was kind of a gym, a hobby room, and a game processing room. That's what the previous owner used it for. That space was converted prior to the city adopting its policy on detached living spaces, and it wasn't fully converted. Like I said, I think it sort of happened incrementally over time. So again, this is no exterior changes are being proposed. It's just kind of remodeling the interior of this space that's already partially converted and making it official living space. The applicant does intend to convert it into an ADU at some point in the future when the city has an ordinance. That we've been working on an ordinance. The house itself is 2 stories, approximately 2,000 square feet. It was originally a duplex, but was converted quite a number of years ago into a single family residence. The lot is planned development, so the multiple units would be allowed on the property, but it's not large enough with the current zoning language to allow that at this time. And the house was converted to 2 bedrooms. So the septic system size for 3 bedrooms. So there would be a total of three bedrooms on this property. I will note that there are a couple of commissioners that live within 500 feet of the property, but there are not residential properties within a 500 square feet area that it's 25% of the properties in town. So that's considered to affect the public generally. So it's not unique to affect commissioners or commissioners. Interest. I showed the square footages here. Even with the increased living space, it's a fairly large lot, so it stays under the 25% of the Florida lot area ratio that we look at. I did note just for future precedents and reviewing projects, the planning commission sometimes treats garages a little bit differently from accessory structures, primarily so that they can be taller than 15 square feet or 15 feet in height. In this case, the structure is less than 15 feet in height, so it does meet standards for detached accessory structures, which don't have to meet setbacks. Setbacks are met, nothing's changing. The site is conforming as to parking. As I mentioned, setbacks are all met. There's no extra changes being proposed. Staff is recommending approval. The one design review finding that kind of comes into play is that the guideline on maximum of 2,000 square feet for residences with the detached living space. It will exceed that. But again, no, that's just a guideline. Structures can be larger on larger lots, or if they're sited and designed in such a way intrusive. In this case, again, no changes are proposed. Staff recommendation is for approval. The conditions of approval reflect the Planning Commission's policy on approving detached living space. So these are conditions that the Planning Commission has adopted as part of the policy for approving.
Okay, well, I'll begin just by addressing them within the 500-foot radius. I'm going to read the statement. After careful consideration, I've determined that any financial effect on my interest is indistinguishable from the effect on a significant segment of the population as defined under the public general exception. Specifically, this decision will impact at least 25% of property owners, and my interest is not uniquely affected beyond that of the broader community. Based on this analysis and in compliance with FPPC regulations, I believe I'm legally and ethically permitted to participate in this decision-making process. So I will not be recusing myself. Are there any questions from the commissioners for staff presentation?
I got one. So for this to be converted into another residence, like a rental, they have to go through another process.
They would have to go through another process now. The way our draft ordinance was looking, once it's passed, they could potentially convert it administratively. But that will depend on the final format of city's AD ordinance.
Yeah. Sometimes I get confused as to what step is first. Okay. And the only reason I wondered about that is because it doesn't seem like there's any kind of parking issue if it's just another bedroom for the house.
Yeah.
But if it would become a rental, there's no discussion about parking, even though it looked like in the picture that there was a driveway outside and potentially a gate with the alley.
Yeah, so even if ADU permit would be approved administratively, it would still have to meet parking, septic, all the other standards for ADUs.
Thank you.
So I'll go next. So what are the factors that require us to even look at this? There's no change in the footprint. Changes have been made internally prior to this, and I don't recall that they were before the Planning Commission. What's the factor or factors that requires us to look at this?
And that's a good question. I think, as this happened, like I said, it sort of happened incrementally before we had this policy in place. So it was a little bit more of a gray area. And I think the catch is that development includes changing the intensity use of property. So increasing residential floor area, increasing the number of bedrooms, even if you're not making external changes, is development under the Coastal Act. And so this is the design review is really the only way that we have to capture that.
So there were internal changes made prior to this. And I don't recall they came before you.
They did not. So this was done in 2014. Some changes were made in 2007. Some were made in 2014. And it was before we had this policy in place. So I kind of worked with the owner to try and make sure it didn't cross a line into being a kitchen and residential living space. My understanding is that it was not conditioned space. It turns out it was conditioned space, but when I approved the building permit, I understood it to not be conditioned space. So the wood stove may have been added later. Some of the drywall may have been added later.
Thank you.
I had a question just on condition number 5. And that's the one that says attached living space shall operate as an extension of, be dependent on, and shall not be used or rented separately from the primary structure. Help me square that with the intent and the ability to use it as an ADU later.
So that we would remove that condition
Later or tonight?
later. And maybe that should be reworded unless an AD permit is received. Probably some of those should be reworded. Unless an AD, because this isn't an area where AD. Which to those conditions.
Okay, so that raises a question in my mind. One of the letters that we received indicated that this was listed. So I'm now confused.
Well, so it could be rented. So, and this is another, it's just one of those kind of gray areas with these spaces. You can rent it, like you could rent to a bedroom in your home.
Well,
But technically it's supposed to be part of the living space.
well, then condition of approval 5 is not right. Because it says that it shall not be used or rented separately from the primary structure. And there
It's
seems,
semantics to comply with our zoning requirements. That makes sense. I mean, because you can rent a bedroom in your home, and that's essentially what they can do, but they can't rent it as a separate unit with its own address and. Now, in reality, how it functions, there's not necessarily a difference.
well, I get that. And personally, I guess I don't feel, unless someone convinced me otherwise, that I would care whether or not it was rented. The point being is that we now have a condition of approval that says that it cannot be rented separately. So do we not have to either delete that or change that wording in there?
You could change it. That is directly from your policy on approving detached living spaces. Planning Commission has approved.
The language has already been approved. Something.
I thought that was going to be a simpler question.
And to take that a step further, you could rent that. Considering this is being considered a room in the house, you could rent it on a short-term basis with no
Yeah.
permit.
Right.
It's just a room in your house.
Well, you'd have to have it's a home share STR. You would have to have an STR.
But
But there's no cap on it. You have to get the license, but there's no cap on home share.
There's a cap on residents, but there's not on home shares, but you do have to be there.
Yes, yeah, right.
I mean, it's not the same as renting a room in your house to somebody because it's got so bad. It's got essentially a kitchen that not a conventional kitchen, but somebody certainly live there without bothering people in the main house ever.
Yes.
All right, any other questions for Trevor on the staff report? If not, I would love to, the applicants in the room. See if there's anything you'd like to share with us?
Sarah speaking online.
Perfect, okay. Sarah, if you would like to say anything, now is a perfect opportunity as the applicant or the applicant's agent. Can't quite see if it's muted or not. Can you see on the screen, Anton? We can come back to that then. Any public comments on this project? We did, like you say, receive the one letter, right, from the immediately adjacent neighbors saying they had no issue with it. Right, then we'll bring it back to us. What specifically are you referring to?
Was this the conflict of interest thing that we're talking about?
No, that we spoke to earlier. That's a couple of us own property about 500 feet, and because it's such a small town, it doesn't impact
Yeah, that makes
anybody else.
sense.
So, yeah.
All right.
No, that's all right. All right, then back to us. For me, I need to square myself with how to make 5 not limiting, because the way it's written right now, I feel like it's precluding, a stated desire in the staff report by the applicant. I don't want to preclude that. I think the ability to have more housing is a good thing.
Yeah, didn't we write that attached living spaces preclude such things? It's to keep people from effectively creating an ADU without going through such process.
Yeah, so I think, the city's ordinances, basically don't allow, ADUs. The state requires city to allow ADUs. We're kind of in this weird position being in the coastal zone, of having to go with our LCP. So in a way, it's kind of a compromise, and it's a way for people to, people do expand their own living space and use it as their own living space and detach. Yes. But, I think some of them are used as small ADUs. I think the idea of the conditions is that it's kept to a minimum. It's not a full kitchen, so you're not having a family living there, cooking big meals, that sort of thing. It's really more like having a room. But keep it within some confines. And I would say like number, probably 5 and 7, you could qualify. Like number 6 as without further city approval. So you could just add that to those conditions so that in the future, if and when they come and get an ADU permit, those conditions would then.
Sarah's on mute.
Okay, thank you.
406 line.
There we go. All right, Sarah, you want to give it a shot now?
She hung up and she's gonna call back. I guess she's the one on time too.
Oh, as well. Okay. Give it a second.
So she's on.
Sarah, are you there? Can you try saying something? Well, we'll keep moving forward if she comes in. We'll be moving into this.
So another number on the.
Well, we had questions for the applicant, and the applicant isn't available. Why would we continue?
To call her, put her on speakerphone. She.
Yeah, great idea. Yeah, we can set it. Make this happen.
Yeah, should put you in speaker.
Who by the microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe right up on the podium there.
I got it.
You're not muted on my side, but I can't sign in for some reason. So I'm just agent and Travis is the actual owner, so she can answer any specific questions. I don't know that I have much to add. Trevor did a pretty thorough report. He works pretty closely with Trevor. The whole intent was really just to legalize the space that's there. And then if and when the city adopts the new ADUs, we would have to come back. Because we wanted to have it as a legal separate residence. So we're not asking for any exceptions or anything outside of the constraints of the code. Really just preventing it as that detached bedroom that it kind of already is. If there's any questions for me specifically, I'm more than happy to answer them. Sorry for the technical difficulties here.
Quite all right. Can you hear me okay, Sarah?
He's coming over.
No, quite all right. This is Aaron. I just want to make sure that I understand you correctly, that you're fine with it as currently conditioned.
So
Sorry, not that, the conditions of the approval tonight. One of the conditions is that it shall not be rented separately. So that's what we're.
Trevor was getting, and I think the decision's up to you guys, but when it says can be rented separately, to me, and at least Trevor, that means has a separate standalone unit, but it can be rented. Two bedroom, because I'm not considered separately because the bedroom. Whatever you guys want. Understand what Trevor's saying, that's how we see.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else of the commissioners has a chance to run on over? Thanks, Aaron.
Summarize what you think you heard.
So am I correct then, Trevor, that unaltered, these conditions of approval in its current state could not be rented as an ADU, but it could be rented separately as a room in a home, right?
Yeah, just like you would rent to a tenant, rent a bedroom in your home to
Okay.
a tenant. And, you know, they would have access to certain areas.
So down the road, they want to convert it to an ADU hypothetically, right? That would come to you ministerially, and if it met all the criteria, then that would kind of override this, because then now there's a separate ADU permit covering it, right?
That's correct, yeah.
So with that in mind,
Yeah.
does 5 stay or get deleted?
I think it stays with an additional sentence that says unless your ADU permit is issued.
Is that additional statement necessary, Trevor, or would just going through the ADU application?
Application and make sure that that goes away without having it come back to you.
Something as simple as without city approval, right?
Yeah.
Where's Mud, Richard?
Well, I do understand that we're in a little bit of the in between the mountain and valley here with the rules and regulations and ordinances. But I think I understand the intent of adding that phrase. So could you read the entire addition?
So number 5, the detached living space shall operate as an extension of and be dependent on the principal use, and it shall not be used or rented separately from the primary structure without further city approval. And same with number 7, a separate mailing address and utility meters for the detached living space accessory structure are prohibited without further city approval.
The only other condition I might be inclined to add is that could be controversial, but is that this approved detached living space not be used as a short-term rental.
Well, I think we're covered with the STR ordinance on that.
I think it probably could be an STR. There's a similar situation on West with a detached living space that's short-term.
But I guess what I'm saying is it meets the criteria of the STR ordinance, correct?
It could be used as a home share STR potentially. So they'd have to come get a license, but it wouldn't have to come to you.
Okay.
Well, as there aren't on any in town.
Right.
Right. Any one of us could
Well,
do that same thing with a room in our
with
house.
a room in our house,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, what I'm suggesting is contrary to that.
Right. Okay.
That's not popular.
Yeah, I just speaking for myself, I would have a hard time supporting that just because the ordinance, I think, is kind of in place to manage and cap that. For me, I'm one of four.
I just want them to rent it to an actual person.
Right.
To
Yeah. I have no intention to SDR the property. It can be a long-term rental.
Okay.
So that's
Thank you. Let's see, any public comments? Can't remember if I opened it up to that on the project. Did I do that already? I think I did. Not, yes, no, okay. All right, back to us then. Any other commissioners, discussion, questions, clarifications? If not, then I will make a motion, excuse me, based on application materials, information, findings included in the staff report and based on public testimony, I found that the project is consistent with the city's LCP and other applicable regulations, and I move to adopt the information and required design review and view protection findings in the staff report and approve the project as described in the staff report and as conditioned herein with the additional changes to conditions 5 and 7 as read by Trevor earlier.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, passes unanimously. Good, congrats. Don't feel like you need to stay for the rest of the meeting. We don't hold that against any particular applicant. All right, moving on, agenda item number 2. Trevor.
All right, so this item was continued from the last meeting. The planning commission requested some additional information from the applicant as part of that hearing. The project description has not changed. The staff is still recommending approval based on project's consistency with the zoning. The supplemental information that was provided by the applicant has to do with the septic system, as well as talking to some of the neighbors to see if some of their concerns and issues addressed. And I think the applicant will speak further to that, but there is a memo that provides a little bit of summary of the efforts in that instance. And then I provided a little bit of supplemental information regarding the density, because there's a lot of statements going around that this is 5 houses on half an acre, and that's really incorrect. So I provided a little bit more information about the density, and I provided an aerial photo that kind of shows the context. The leaf square with the 1 acre of the houses and the septic system. So that's the area of potential vegetation clearing, but you can see the entire 3 parcel there. And just for context, so we talked about neighborhood context. Recall this is in city limits. It is neighboring the RV park. It is zone plan development, which allows mixed uses and commercial uses. Most of the properties along West Haven Drive to the north in the city are also zoned plan development, so similar kinds of uses depending on the land. I thought it was also interesting to note, these parcels outlined in red, about 1,000 feet down West Haven Drive, is actually a denser development in the county parcels. So this development, I think, could be found to be consistent with the neighborhood, and clustering the houses actually reduces the effects as opposed to having 5 houses on 5 separate parcels. So that's a little bit of additional information that I provided. And then I also included the mitigation monitoring reporting program, and I updated some of the monitoring responsibilities and frequencies in there, as we discussed at the last meeting. Otherwise, the planning commission did approve the CEQA document at the last meeting, but there's still two approvals for you to make. One would be the actions to take. One would be on the design review and the grading permit and coastal development permit. That's for the planning commission would be the approving body for that. And there's the motion from, it's the same as the last staff report in there. The use permit would be a recommendation to the city council because all uses have to go to the city council and be influenced. So that action as a recommendation to city council. The conditions would be the same. And as I noted at the last meeting, based on a request from Trinidad Rancheria to have their own cultural monitor, the contractor only has to hire one monitor according to the mitigation and the CEQA document, but keep the Rancheria historic preservation officer informed about the construction schedule so they can send their own cultural monitor if they want to. So that's today.
All right, Commissioner, questions for Trevor?
You mentioned that the cumulative impact report was provided.
Yeah, so I didn't mention much detail in that. Yeah, the applicant did prepare a cumulative impact assessment for the septic system, provided some additional information. There's a summary in the letter in here. You can look at the report if it's the city. It's also been sent to the health department. I did speak with both Adam and Patrick at the health department, and again they approving the design.
You have questions for Trevor?
I think most of the questions I have are for the agent.
Okay, all right, then we'll open up for the applicant.
Applicant.
Or who wants to, they want to speak to your updated.
I just want to say that, of course, I'm the applicant, Nicole Sager with the York Indian Housing Authority. And I think that, you know, as a project of ours, we've worked really hard to follow the requirements you guys have put in front of us. And we've done that. And we have brought back everything we've been asked to bring back. I think we're getting a little, I just want to say we've done that. And Richard can speak to his contact with the neighbors and the community impact report and any other questions that you might have. But there's some of we were unclear last time how your process works. So there's some people with us that would like to speak on our behalf. I guess you have public comment for that during an action item. We sure how that structure operates. As the applicant, we thought we were all the applicant. So we weren't able to speak when there was a public comment last time because we just thought we were only able to speak as the applicant. Hopefully we'll have that forum tonight to do that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Evening, commissioners, should you have any questions, I'm happy to address them.
I just want to make a comment. I want to note that cumulative impact report, the septic system in detail. Nice job.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate the letter that came from your company. And glad you covered a lot of the questions that we all had. Appreciate that. My one question is, I know you've reached out to the neighbors, but in your letter, you indicate that there was still one person, Mr. McDougall, that you had not discussed or had a discussion with. Did that happen?
That is correct, that did happen.
Can you summarize the results of that? Do you want me to come up?
If Mr. McDougall, if he's
Sure.
inclined to do so, we met this afternoon to
Okay.
fill you in as to the contents of that meeting.
I'm not gonna say much. You say what you want.
So basically, we met this afternoon essentially just to, obviously, Mr. McDougall, I'm just gonna call him because it's more comfortable.
Give me some background though. You did try to meet with me 10 minutes on a Sunday.
Yes,
And you just showed up to my house, kind of.
Well, I didn't show up to the house, I texted you. In
Yeah.
fact, I don't live in the area essentially, so I take any opportunity I have to buzz with the neighbors, especially with Ian being that he's the most impacted neighbor immediately adjacent to the development. So we finally got a chance to meet today. Essentially, our concern is to provide and to make the project as feasible and as respectable to the neighbors of the community adjacent. You know, we addressed that. We could have shifted the development to be literally immediately against his parcel line, you know, consider the setback. But what we did actually, in the interest of providing that separation and in respecting that boundary, is that we actually shifted the project as much as we possibly could away from his property line. So basically, essentially at the moment where his property line exists, the project starts another 30 feet away. At minimum 30 to 40 feet away from where his property line is. Therefore, what we're doing by that is we're preserving the cherry tree that he's inclined to save. We're saving a lot of trees that are serving as buffered as well. And that was our main concern to meet with Ian today and with his wife Renata, was to assure them that we are going to respect that buffer as much as possible to provide that separation. We're also we want to build an 8-foot cedar fence along the entire parcel boundary too, just to provide the further separation. So that's essentially, you know, the meeting took place. I did reach out to all the other neighbors. I left their contact information to via phone or email. They all noted their concerns. We heard them readily. We provided as much feedback and support as we possibly could. Again, I just really want to make clear that we have done as Trinity Valley engineers, we've done a lot of projects with the Europe Tribe, with the housing, with the Europe Housing Authority. And it's always been our intent we're not there to just bulldoze the land and overtake and here's our project and I don't care about the rest. We are very methodical about respecting the neighbors and making as palpable as possible the projects that fit to the neighborhood and to respect what their neighbors concerned. So I just want to really emphasize that because again, we've done many projects and this has always been our approach. So
I appreciate you coming over today. The one thing that I have a problem with is you showed up today and you said, how can you confirm where the setback is? Because you personally told me you didn't bring your maps, and you told me that last time too. Like, how can we confirm where that setback is?
well,
If you don't bring your maps.
If I can just bring it back for a second, this is the applicant's time right now.
Yeah, but he offered me to come up with.
I understand, but I'm also the chair of this meeting. And what we're not going to do is we're not going to have back and forth conversation between parties that are not directly related. And that's what's happening right now. So I'm going to put a stop to it right now.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I was just kind of, I got cut off.
You're welcome to speak during public comment and you'll have your 3 minutes and can raise all the points you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
commissioners, I will address that comment the last time. I don't have the specific, I do have the maps, and the maps are also depicting the cumulative report that you hold in place. I just don't have the exact location because we haven't done the survey yet. I mean, as we indicated before, our intent before anything gets touched on the parcel is to come in with the survey team, delineate the project, and then therefore depict what trees can be salvaged and saved, just do that immediate impact. So although we are going to provide that buffer, I just don't have exact markers because we're not on the site delineating that. But I mean that buffer is slated and it's shown on your maps actually that sits in front of you. That is there. So just want to make that.
Kind of like what you were pointing out to me earlier.
Yes.
Okay.
I apologize. I didn't want to get too deep into the weeds, but perhaps for everyone's ability to understand the cedar fence, which you are including in the project now.
Yes.
Could you just real quick show us just on the map where that fence is?
That would be the darker line that you would see on the map. Again, this is what I'm showing to you. It's the septic report. We're updating the grading plan as we speak, and we've done some updates, but I don't have that information included in the maps as of now.
I understand that. I'm not saying I wanted to see it specifically. It's just On which side of the quadrant is that?
But it would be like basically figure out next. Basically on the second. It's essentially would be where the darkest line adjacent to the last two houses are. That's the approximate location.
Can you just show us which map or what figure you're referring to? Just, we've got several in the packet.
Yes, they're two maps and the line, the depicted line is the same on both. Essentially, you can see that, say the first map is showing the fence, and that is actually the fence that exists in Ian's property. And so therefore you can see the setback from where the development starts essentially. That's where we're.
The unit is to the southeast.
Yes, that is correct.
So roughly 5 foot at that, what's shown as the 5 foot property line setback.
You know, that's actually more than 5 feet there. At that point, it's about 30 feet approximately
From the fence?
from your fence. That is correct.
Right.
Why does it say 5 feet though?
I think that's because that's the setbacks, but 5 feet.
It's just showing the setback line, and I think we ended up determining it's 10 feet off.
That's correct.
But
It is 10 feet, and those are not. Again, we're updating the grading plan, so we don't have that information shown there. This is essentially what I was referring to on these maps was for septic purposes only. So I don't have that information included there.
houses are more than 5.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get a feel for.
Absolutely.
That's what it's-
Appreciate the question.
Any questions of the applicant from the commissioners? All right, thank you. And I want to say I very much appreciate the frustration with the extra step continuing to the next meeting. And I appreciate the work that you guys did reaching out to the neighbors. That is meaningful for me as I make a decision tonight. So I appreciate that effort that took place. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
All right, now we will open it up for public comments. Obviously, again, please come to the podium, state your name. This is your chance. You can have approximately 3 minutes. And we'd love to hear anything anybody has to say. If there's new information, repeating what was shared with us at the last meeting, now's your opportunity. We'll start with what's in the room.
I live next door and my 2 kids. I appreciate that. But I'm hearing all these different numbers now, like 5 feet, 10 feet, 30 feet. Doesn't really seem like it's official in the paperwork yet. So I'm a little concerned that that's not like an official thing, is it? I'm hearing lots of different numbers being thrown around. And that worries me. And then the density stuff. That it's different than what we discussed last time, but it seems a lot of houses in a rural area, like why not a couple less or maybe build up or something? I know you guys lawyers, so I don't want to.
Thank you. Anybody else in the room or anybody online? Nope.
For the record, my name is Karen Parker, not Kathy Parker. Wrongly in minutes.
Sorry about that. We'll get that changed.
Okay, I'm Karen, my husband is Ken, we live directly across the street from this proposed project. I strongly object to staff report about this project. It says clearly that this will not significantly impact the surrounding neighborhood. People, it directly does affect us, having this amount of density in our backyard. The staff said there's no evidence. Well, we're people, we are evidence. You know, you can't just say there's no evidence. Sorry, I'm very passionate about this. I know the commission spends a lot of time reading documents. I've been on boards. I understand you have 100 pages here, 100 pages there, and you are making a decision that's going to affect my backyard. You just spent the last 35 minutes discussing a room. Yeah, tonight you have the authority to decide you want 5 houses built across the street from mine. And my neighbors. So time-wise, you're making this decision to build 5 permanent cement buildings. So that's why I think it needs more time. The staff claims that this density is only, she wrote a whole thing about how it's not 0.5 acres. If you look on your color glossy map, the red around shows that the density is not the same. You can't compare those. That's her point of view. You can't compare it that way. You drive up West Haven, you can see where the division of trees are and putting 5 houses in that little area. These homes also cluster development. 5 homes right next to each other, no garages, no backyards. In fact, you had that in your backyard. Engineer stated to us today that, oh, exactly what Renata said, we'll make it 30 feet. We'll give you 30 feet. But we'll make 3 more parking spots. Wouldn't that be great? However, if you move the whole project to the north, then it hits Parker Creek. How can you just say you're going to move 30 feet and then you move it into Parker Creek? But that doesn't make sense to me. And we do feel, yes, I was contacted. Richard did contact me, did contact the other people. And we still voiced our concern. That doesn't mean there was any change. Yes, you contacted me. Why want to consider doing less density? I know you're trying to do a lot of work, planning for 5 houses. That doesn't mean they can't do 3 houses. That we don't want to stop anything that you're trying. We don't want it to stop. We just want the density reduced. In conclusion, there is impact to our neighborhood. It's emotionally, physically, and please do not rubber stamp this tonight and say go forward. That decision is made. And we feel that this has been pushed. Yes, the homework was done, but if it was your 5 permanent cement buildings in 0.5 acres, it's too big. Thank you.
Other public comment in the room?
I agree, now Rachel Prowalt. I'm a Yurok tribal member, resident of Trinidad, and mother of 3 children. Not only is this land the land of my ancestors, but it is also a place that my family has called home for generations. In fact, my great-grandpa, Irvin Hendricks, built the home at 407 East Street at the end of U Avenue. Additionally, my 3 children are 3rd-generation Trinidad Dragons, as I, along with both of my parents, attended Trinidad Elementary School. I grew up working at Seascape Restaurant through high school and my college years, and since I have donated many seasons coaching volleyball and basketball at Trinidad. My brother is a Trinidad fisherman and has owned and operated the fishing vessel, the Joe, for nearly 20 years. I don't know if you know, but the Joe is a deep-rooted charm of Trinidad, owned by Hallmark previously. I'm an employee of the Yurok Indian Housing Authority and have been there for 10 years. Over this time, I've assisted tribal members with everything from homeless housing assistance, student vouchers, and down payment assistance to buy their first home. I understand that change for anyone can be hard, especially for a small, unique fishing town as Trinidad. But this small, unique fishing town has already changed. When I was younger, I remember Trinidad being the best place to go trick-or-treating in town. All the houses were lit up and they gave out the best candy. Over the last several years, Trinidad has become a destination town for vacationers. So when I bring my children here to trick-or-treat, many of the homes are empty. And only half of the houses are lit up. It's no longer the best place to go trick-or-treating. With the increase of vacationers and Airbnbs comes a decline of residents. The attendance at Trinidad School has severely declined to the point of needing to recruit students to come to Trinidad to go to school. The bus services have been extremely limited, and now the school is only able to operate an after-school transportation by way of an SUV that's driven by the principal or after-school staff. Not only is affordable housing a need here, but it's a need throughout the county, state, everywhere. It was previously mentioned by a member that Trinidad has a state requirement to fill to provide housing opportunities. This has not been met. This housing project will not only assist in meeting the city's requirement, but also provide much needed housing opportunities to tribal members, potentially increasing school attendance and the city's economy. I attended the previous meeting here at the town hall regarding this matter last month. I had to sit there and bite my tongue the entire time. It wasn't until that meeting that I felt like I was part of this community. But all I could feel was disgust. I was disgusted with the ignorance and the stereotypical allegations made towards Yurok people, the housing authority, and our professional engineering staff. Thank you.
Any other public comment in the room?
Trustee Shorty, my background and my professional side is grants and planning and program development. And I know for a fact when Housing Authority, the Yurok Tribes Housing Authority builds in a district, additional funds comes into that district and county. Housing Authority receives state funding and federal funding. I know our director, Nicole, she really focuses on infrastructure, water, septic. And also she has an eye for like sidewalks and playgrounds and community centers. So keep that in mind. If you approve a housing authority project from the Yurok tribe, additional funds will be targeted towards your town, your community, and your county. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marty Lewis, and I'm Development Director for the Yurok Indian Housing Authority. I'm a Hoopah tribal member, so I live in Hoopah, and I'm married to a Yurok family. But during the time that I've worked here for the last 5 years, we've been building houses, and during that time, I've seen the various houses that we built in different locations, and we worked in small communities. And not only have we provided housing, we've provided wonderful things for the community beautification, things that people love. I know it's their stuff there, so. And I've not heard any negative comments for the housing built in other places. Our tenants are thoroughly vetted prior to occupancy, and we're verifying the eligibility and compliance, and additionally, we require regular inspections and rental units to ensure the units are well cared for and meet program compliant. So again, we haven't heard any negative comments from any other community, only good things, and they've been a beautiful project. Thank you.
Any other commentary in the room from the public? Any online? Seeing any, I'll close. Oh, sorry, yes, Anthony.
Susan, after they read.
Please, yeah.
These are comments from Susan Rotwein, who lives at 54 West Haven Drive. Hi, commissioners, city staff, and members of the community. I apologize that I'm unable to attend the meeting tonight. I had to go to Reading today to have unplanned oral surgery. I would like to offer comment on the Yurok Tribe's housing development project. I fully support the addition of new housing in Trinidad. I also support the cluster development of the project as proposed. Unfortunately, the project as submitted has a density similar to the urban density of San Francisco and is not appropriate for the city of Trinidad or the property where the project is proposed, as the majority of the property is zoned special environment. I do not believe that the property will support an on-site septic system that would service 5 3-bedroom homes. Further, the traffic generated from this development alone will negatively impact the already overtaxed West Haven Drive. It is my understanding that the buildable area of the property is less than 1 acre. Density of development in this area of West Haven Drive ranges from 1 home per acre to more than 2 acres per home. I would ask that the applicant consider decreasing the density of the project to 3 homes, and even consider a townhouse to decrease the footprint on the buildable area of the property. I can fully support the project if the density is decreased to 3 homes or less. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this project.
All right. Hi, Sherry. Yeah, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you, city commissioners. I just wanted to ask a quick question about density guidelines. That seems to be the theme that is running through this. It's not that our community does not appreciate that we need more affordable housing, but the question is the density model. So I asked the commissioners, is there a policy or guidelines or procedures on how to set density guidelines? Because if there's not one within the city of Trinidad, then you're making an exception for this project. So I think you need to, is there guidelines within the city limits? I mean, I live right in town of Trinidad right here, and there's more than 5 houses within the 3-acre place. So I just would like you to think about that comment. And if there is a need to have density guidelines, then I think that's the direction that the commissioners need to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Trevor, do you want to speak a little bit?
So the zoning as plan development requires 8,000 square feet per unit. The parcel is 3 acres in total. Approximately 2/3 of that is zone plan development, but only about 1 acre is developable because of stream and wetland setbacks. So I looked at that developable acre, and 5 houses on 1 acre still meets that 1 unit per acre. And I think that's the densest you could look at.
If I could just, having said that, could you reference another section of the city which has essentially the same density with the same requirements?
So the PD zone is a little bit unique, but that would be consistent with the UR zone. So this part of town. So it's
Urban residential.
Yeah. So that is the same as the urban residential, which is more this central part of town where most of the properties east of the freeway are zone the suburban residential, which is requires a minimum 20,000 square feet per lot. But if you look at the entire 3-acre lot, it's still, the density is less than 1 unit per 20,000 square feet.
Okay. Any other public comment? Not seeing any more online or in the room. So in that case, we'll close public comment. And if the applicant has any response to any public comment, now would be a chance to say anything. If not, we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. All right, commissioners.
At the end of the day, I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to us and our project. I had met with Trevor before we ever purchased the property and was discussing these types of developments. And at no point in time was it ever deterred that we would put some sort of residences on this property. We talked about the part of the parcel that would never be able to be developed. And so I just want to say, like, I don't feel like that was very forthcoming from the city. If you have these parcels that you feel like there's these big constraints on, maybe, reaching out to their owners and letting them know. I mean, this was sold to us as something that was absolutely not a problem. And I do feel like your staff was in support of that. And so, maybe we would have made a different decision at the end of the day in a different community if you're ancestral territory, for the project, had we thought that this was something so controversial of a project, within the community. And like I said, we've done all the studies you've asked. I thought we were within the policies and permits and the engineering and the CEQA, we've done a NEPA. So, I feel like we tried to meet all of the intent of your guidelines and policies. So at the end of the day, just wanted to thank you for your time.
Lots of questions, comments?
I guess I'll go first. My sentiment towards the project is similar to that of last month's meeting. I won't restate my entire statement, but generally speaking, I'm certainly sympathetic with the neighbors and understand how this project will potentially change or likely change your community, this little part of West Haven Drive. But I think that's something that is to be expected or should be expected by the neighbors and living next to an undeveloped lot that you don't own and don't have control over, as I do in my neighborhood. I recognize the need for affordable housing, and I recognize the need for tribal housing in our area, and I want more people to live in the city and use our services. And generally speaking, I support the project, and I guess the one thing I do want to comment on is with regard to like the fence discussion and things is I guess I understand how there's some discrepancy over where the fence is going to exactly land, and I think that's just largely tied to the fact that the applicant hasn't surveyed the property yet, so they don't know exactly where everything is going to land. They have a good spatial awareness of what the parcel looks like, and that's just not something you typically do until you actually have a project approved. But Richards.
I'm kind of new at this planning commission thing, but I've been around development for a long time. I have more history here in Trinidad than any of you. Some an old guy. I was raised here. I am uncomfortable with the kind of density that this project brings. Not familiar to me in an area like this. But this city has developed a whole lot of criteria for development. I understand the plan unit development advantages, but clustering things on the best part of a piece of property. And I think the applicants done their job. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just resonate with both of what you've said, maybe in a slightly little different way. From the information that has been provided by neighbors, by the applicant, by the engineering staff, and our staff, the project essentially meets all requirements. It is a situation where a property owner does have the right to develop property as long as it meets all the requirements, and or at least we understand what exceptions need to be made. And at this point, I see no real need for any exceptions. My question regarding density is, I think, important because I know it's a new thing in this area, but as the city has developed these ordinances for zoning ordinances, it is equivalent to density that we see every day in other parts of the city. So based on what's been presented to us last time, today, and in the meantime, I see no reason that I could not approve the project as configured this evening.
And then not to make this last any longer, I kind of echo the sentiments of the other commissioners, particularly Kristen's comments and Richard's comments. You know, this is difficult. It's a boundary zone between two disparate kind of areas with different zoning requirements and different expectations. It's city, county, it's right on the line. And so, you know, it's set up for disappointment, I guess, for somebody in this situation. It's set up for a difference in potentially what is used to being there, but what is going to be there. And to Tristan's point, you know, the lots there, and to Richard's point, it's meets all our criteria and people have the right to develop their property. So with that, I don't really have anything else to add. At this point, anybody care to make a motion? We can find the right one.
I'll make one regarding the design review and grading permit. Based on the information submitted in the application included in the staff report and public testimony of the hearing, I find the project is consistent with the city's LCP and other applicable regulations, and I move to adopt the information, the design review, view protection, and other findings in the staff report, and approve the design review and grading permit for the project as described in the staff report and supplement as conditions therein.
Favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimous. Is that the only one, Trevor? Or is there a second?
Yeah, then there would be the recommendation on the use permit as well.
I think I have that one here on packet page 39, right? Yeah. Based on the information submitted in the application included in the staff report supplement and public testimony, I move to adopt the information and conditional use permit findings in the staff report and recommend approval of the use permit to the city council.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimous. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 3. Sure, yeah, we'll take a brief 5-minute recess.
I think Tristan was great as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something.
We muted Anton. Recess, thank you.
No.
We have enough at 9:30 or something. All right, Anton, are we back? We're back live. All right, reconvening after a brief break. Trevor, safety element.
Oh, yeah, so I didn't, so I incorporated that there was a big difference between the January and the March versions of the safety element. A lot of it was cutting down the amount of text and summarizing the information, combining some policies. And we did discuss it at the March meeting. There were only 3 commissioners there. I did incorporate your comments. There are some questions for coastal commission that are outstanding that I have not had a chance to meet with coastal commission. We didn't have our regular April or May meetings to talk about our updates. So I do have to follow up with some things with the coastal commission. And then the other big new thing in here are the figures.
Right. What do we have for Trevor, everybody? One question off the bat. Packet page 77, relationship to other planning documents. And I understand what you're trying to do here with the supremacy, right, between the 2 documents. I worry that we have some kind of design review-esque comments and things in here. In a few spots, I thought, when it comes to kind of retreat, or not design, but other stuff that might fall elsewhere. I just want to make sure that we're not, that either we remove those entirely or think about that supremacy statement.
Okay.
That we don't accidentally have something in here that then supersedes something we've put elsewhere. And I will apologize, I can't find my marked up copy.
Definitely, we do need to review the general plan needs to be internally consistent, for sure. That is something that we need to do. I am trying to change the process a little bit. The Coastal Commission has always said that they want the entire general plan and the entire land use ordinances all together as one LCP update. And I just, as we've gone on, I just think that both for city staff and coastal commission staff, I submitted the land use, the circulation, the conservation open space elements to them, responding to their previous comments I submitted in February 2023, and I have not gotten their comments. So, I think it's unmanageable for them as well. So I am, and I'm working on an amendment to the LCP grant. Unfortunately, I can't get more money added to it, but I'm kind of refocusing the grant to focus on the safety element, because that's one of the grant's primary purposes and safety element regulations. And so I'm thinking about, I was just looking today at our existing general plan, and if we were just to take the safety element to the coastal commission, what in our existing general plan needs to be amended? So I think hopefully we can do it a little bit more piecemeal, but we will be looking at internal consistency and consistency. More information.
I appreciate the education.
But I'll just make I think I actually made this comment before, but I'll make it again. There are a couple of things in here, and that speak to programs, my old friend, but I don't think are programs. And if you're willing, I'll just real quickly go through them and just reference them, and then we can figure out whether or not they make any sense. But on page 6, the second full paragraph down, right at the end of your red line, it says program SAF. And you talk about shoreline hazards and include a waiver for claim of damage. I don't think that's a program. That's a policy. And I'm moving on to page, well, this is 84 or page 10 of the safety program, the safety element. And the same thing at the top of the page where it says program SAF 2.5. I don't think that's a program either, requiring implementation of the geological report recommendations as a condition. That's not something that's done on a repetitive basis. That's an individual thing for each parcel. I think there was one more. Yeah, on page 16, at the top of the page, it doesn't have a number for the program. It says, to the extent applicable, evaluation shall include analysis of the following. And again, I think that's not a program, that is a policy. And maybe there was one more that going through page by page. I think that was it.
I'll have to review our standards and guidelines for what's a policy versus what's a program.
Well, okay, yeah, fair enough. My feeling is that a program was something that we do for everything, and it's a kind of a database kind of thing where we are collecting information for all parcels. And I looked at these as not necessarily being required for all parcels, so which I thought that made it more specific.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a good point. Take a look and see what you think. Again, my editorial comment is there are so many programs that we are stuck with. I just can't see that staff is going to be able to handle them all.
Well, the last one you brought up, this is a list of criteria for, you're telling somebody how to write a report. It has to be included.
Well, in my mind, that's not a program.
No, that's not a program.
Yeah.
Not at all. Right.
Well, and I think and that's where, you know, these coastal general plan policies are a little bit different than a normal general plan policy, because a normal general plan policy would be general. And it would say, you know, include details in the zoning ordinance, and wouldn't actually include the details. But in the coastal zone, the coastal commission wants to see those details in the ordinance. So that's just makes it a little bit confusing to be general.
People are thinking, can we put a list of acronyms?
Yes, and you've mentioned that before, and we've talked about, I didn't include that in here. I did make sure they were all defined. I did do that.
Yeah, but just in the table of contents, why not just someplace that's just a list? I mean, there's
We have talked about whether to have the acronyms in each element or for the whole general plan, but I think it probably makes sense to have it for each element. It's easier to find.
I'm chuckling, Roland, because I had that exact same request my first couple meetings. I'm like, I am just absolutely lost in a fog of acronyms.
Well, I mean, I had a whole bunch of them written on here, you know, my own self.
Yeah,
but I just think of the general audience, and I mean, half of them that are in here I know, but I mean, there's so many I don't, you know, and they all make sense, kind of. I used to think if it ended with a P and it was a plan, but that's not true.
I do want to say also thank you, Trevor. One of the suggestions I made at seeing an earlier version of this was to kind of pull all that common hazard stuff, talk about that, and then talk about the other stuff separately without restating the, Franciscan layer in every single. So I appreciate that work and thank you for that. I think that makes it a lot cleaner of a document.
I appreciate that too.
There was one other thing about programs on page 19 of the element. There was a comment that you made, and your question was, is this specific item here, PS-2D.4 shoreline protective device siting and design, and your comment was, is this a program? And again, I don't look at that a program, but I'll defer to you if you think that the definition of a program includes some of these things.
That's closer than that.
And I do plan to, after this meeting, I'm going to get a draft with a list of questions to Coastal Commission.
On packet page 80, help me answer this redlining. The very first sentence under 1.5 disclosure of hazard presence says, if I'm trying to read the sentence as proposed, as a condition of approval for a coastal development permit on property hazardous areas. I feel like it's just there's a word or something missing there where you took out containing known.
Just a bad sentence.
Just something.
Oh, as a condition of approval for a coastal.
But containing known is,
Yeah, okay.
Not sure what word should be there to capture your intent, but I felt like it maybe didn't.
I took out too many words.
And then I had another question at the back, the section on 107 where you talk about disaster prep, response and recovery. You talked that something's due to be updated this winter, and then in addition, additional outreach to emergency response group needs to occur. Who's doing that? Is that something else that's ending up on your plate?
Sorry, what page?
107.
Okay.
Your comment, disaster prep, response recovery. You mentioned that the LTMP is going to be updated this winter, but then you have a final comment: additional outreach to emergency response group needs to occur. What groups are you thinking of, and who's doing that outreach, and what should they be reaching out about and for?
I am hoping someone else does that.
That's a good place to hope. Thanks. You came in here.
I appreciate your honesty, but.
I mean, so I don't think the disaster preparedness portion would be coastal. So that's one reason for leaving it off for now. I think that's really city, and wouldn't be part of the LCP. There has been talk about updating the EOP, and if that did get done, I could just copy and paste out of there.
Could it work to put an evergreen statement in there? Something verbiage to the effect of defer to the city's EOP?
Good.
And then it at least refers to the existing one and whatever comes again later?
Yeah, and I mean, and some things are in flux with the fire. District 5, whatever that is in terms of mutual aid. The local hazard mitigation plan is being updated, so hopefully that will give me a little bit of information, although
That's a county document.
it's a county document, but the city has its own chapter in it essentially.
Do they update that for our chapter for us, or who provides input on behalf of the city?
Joe's been working on that and he's reached out to me on some questions. I'm sure he's reached out to the engineer. So he's been working with the county and providing input, although if FEMA goes away, I mean, the local hazard mitigation plan is for FEMA funding, so.
There are examples of what this looks like in other.
Sure, I could provide some examples from other communities.
If you wanted to get me one sooner than later, I'd be happy to take a peek at it and get it back to you before we see it again, if that would be helpful.
I vaguely recall that the current EOP was pretty much put together by the city manager.
I believe it was put together by, in conjunction with the Rancheria, if I recall correctly.
And I think the county office of emergency services was involved.
It's a fairly robust and well-written but dated document when I looked through it, and I think
It's stated.
it's also unknown, I think, to most.
Yeah.
I mean, there's defined roles and things in there and things that should be kind of immediately retrievable in case of an emergency, and people should, well, separate discussion, right?
Yeah, I guess my point in saying that is that I don't think that that's going to take a huge amount of effort to update it. Because a lot of it's just very top level chain of command kind of stuff. Who does what to who. And a lot of that isn't really going to change. Except maybe in areas where, for example, the fire department is not able to do the responsibilities that are currently in there. I'm using that as an example. I don't know if that's true or not, but that kind of stuff that probably is pretty simple.
And probably a lot of the policies doesn't really matter what the current situation is. A lot of the policies will be the same.
Whomever the city gets to provide fire service, right? As an example down there, right? Yeah, it can be general. Yeah.
We've got this new group, local group looking at emergency. Getting their.
Is that the
third?
Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't really.
No, but they'd be good to just include.
Yeah, a reference to them.
Reference to
They
them.
have access to a lot of other programs that using that same model that aren't just the local guys. All of the state, those groups are growing.
You have questions on the figures, Trevor? You mentioned.
I'd like to get your input because you guys haven't, and this is the first you've seen it, so, yeah, I'd like to get your input on these.
There's some odd things on some of these figures. The simple one, the size we had for figure 1, and they show a piece of a tsunami hazard zone north end, and next to Mill Creek just running sort of up into the woods. And where do these kind of aberrations come from?
So that would be, the city's stream layer that we use is should be more correct than like the USGS stream layer because we ground truthed. We used LiDAR and did some ground truthing to better map the local streams and waterways. And so my guess is that's probably the USGS blue line stream that follows.
Is there anybody doing these figures that could just sort of fix something like that?
That's the official tsunami map, and the city doesn't map that. So I wouldn't want to change
We'll change the blue line, blue dotted line, put the creek in that. I don't mean to get it down in the weeds here either, but I'm just saying, things like that.
It might be better
Jump
to
out and make the whole thing.
add a note somewhere that says the tsunamis, it should be recognized that the tsunami zone would run up creeks.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't show it going up Parker Creek at all, but I mean, there's a little embankment there, but it might.
Yeah, Parker Creek's higher grade. So, yeah.
Park Creek goes into a culvert. So
Yeah. Just a little one on McConaughey, it's a little bit off too.
The figure two, what's the added value of having that in here, I guess?
So this would be, this is a significant map, because this is gonna be, what determines where you need soil studies, geologic.
again, you have a map here showing divisions between different things where there's no difference.
Yeah.
So there's something, I mean, there's sort of, it's like a
So-
soil survey
Yeah,
mixed in with this.
Yes.
That's not, shouldn't be connected to the stability.
well, it's the soil slippage potential. So we have, and I can, this is a discussion I do need to have with coastal commission staff. So currently we have a map that shows unstable and questionably stable areas. And that mapping was done in the 70s. And I kind of wanted to see how that lined up with more current data and more current. It was done at a pretty high level. So this slippage potential is based on, yes, the newer NRCS soil mapping units. But it's interesting, it actually aligns quite well with that old unstable and questionably stable areas map.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing, but I think using the more current data probably makes more sense.
I think what Roland's saying is within, say, the low slippage potential, there's like multiple polygons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those lines
yes.
need to be
So we could, and those are the soil units.
Yeah.
And so they're different soil units, but they still have the low slippage potential, but it makes the map confusing. So I could probably,
Get your canopy.
I could probably merge those. Well, I can't, I could have our GIS merge those.
Yeah, and just go through there, in any place you have the dark line going through an area where there's no difference on either
Okay.
side, just
Okay.
get rid of.
Yeah, that would make it.
Doesn't happen. Prepared. But I mean, I kind of agree, it's a pretty good map, and it is nice that it ties in with the slope percentages, and we talked about slope percentage as well. It does show some of the disparity between, well, I mean, you can just look at the hill up along Stagecoach Drive, that's, you know, they've got a big, steep area, and they've got that as a high soil slippage area. Of course, you can't compare that to this, to the coastline. Well, I guess they've got it wrong. That gets enough people's attention that they realize even when you get away from the coast, you've got to deal with steeper slopes.
Yeah.
Overall, I like the map, and it adds to the overall, to the map showing the bluffs and things that are in the internal part of the report. The bluff top line. Good talk with. We ready to talk about figure 3 for a minute? Yeah. There's also some really odd looking things on this map. You know, the bluff edge line kind of makes sense, and I wouldn't want to question that directly. But we also showed the bluff edge buffer. In some cases, the bluff edge buffer goes to the downhill side of the bluff edge. And that, of course, makes no sense.
Yeah.
You're talking about down,
Well, look at the north end there, again.
Yeah.
yeah, and McConnell House is the same way.
On this map, I don't think that showing the undetermined flood zone really adding much. I guess, given that it's basically the whole city. And also given that it's undetermined, it's not that you're not really showing.
Well, I guess it's not, so if you're outside the undetermined, but you're not in a flood zone, then you're not in a flood zone. If you're in the undetermined, you might be in a flood zone.
I followed that, which is what is the most amazing thing.
Okay, I get that.
Right, me.
It's plenty of surveillance, yeah.
Not negative data, yeah.
So, yeah, so for most of the city, we can say because of topography, it's clearly not in a flood zone, but we can't say as determined by FEMA, it's not in a flood zone. That's.
And would you just confirm that these bluff edges, according to the SHN 2022, are actually accurate here?
We could double check that, but yeah, because I think Maya did the mapping for Giovanni, and Justin just used Maya's.
There's some strange breaks, you know, in the bluff.
Yes, so yes, and so part of it was the definition that it's subject to wave action. So there's a bluff along the inside of the harbor area that's not shown because it's not subject to wave action. And there's the break for the terrace that probably the Churai Village is on below Wagner Street. That's exactly where that line is. I mean, and this is one of those maps where it's absolutely subject to change. This is just one.
Oh, right.
One point in time that I think sort of just gives people an idea of if your property's anywhere near one of those lines, you have to.
I think anybody that's really looking into this and trying to apply it to themselves, this map probably is one of the most useful ones of the bunch.
Especially because a lot of coastal commission, the appeal area is based on how far it is from the bluff edge. The exemptions are based on how far it is from a bluff edge. So the bluff edge is pretty important for coastal actually.
Yeah, someday you might need to actually go out there and survey it.
Yeah.
Personally, I had more specific comments on this. I mean, I guess I wonder if there's a spot here on page 19 where we talk about Sand dunes. Anywhere near, so. I think that's-
No, but there, that strip of city property. It might have a sand dune on it. Down in the harbor. There's that strip that goes from Edward Street to the head. It starts probably in the sand.
I guess on the edge of the parking lot before you get into the water.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's the same thing. Take back what I said.
You have to cover every.
Yeah, I tell you what, why not cover it, even if you don't have it, what doesn't hurt.
On back at page 92. Shoreline protective device limitations. Says protection for critical facilities, SPDs shall be permitted only to serve a coastal dependent use or protected structure. What is a coastal dependent use that might, or is that a defined term?
There, that is, even if there's not an actual definition in the Coastal Act, I think that's pretty well defined by case law and coastal city. So aquaculture, harbor facilities,
that kind of stuff.
mortgage. And then there's another subset that's coastal related, that, like a tackle shop or, something like that. It doesn't have to be right on the coast, but it's coastal related. So yeah, that is defined and, is something that we should have in our definition. And I guess my comment there too is I would like to have a definition for pre-existing because I don't want to debate it. But I'd rather just debate it with the coastal commission now. So that's one thing that.
Yeah, I mean, just out of curiosity, what would or wouldn't fit into that?
I think to me, from what I've seen, the most commonly accepted definition is like it's February 1976 when the actual Coastal Act was passed by legislature. But there was the proposition, and then there was, I think it goes back to 1972, and then there was sort of an interim act, and so. Depending on what coastal commission staff person you talk to, it might go back to 1972. But I think the most commonly used is passage of the actual coastal.
So anything that predates that.
Anything that would predate that would be pre-existing, but I guess technically even before so I think the coastal commission's argument is that there are things that should have had a CDP, like starting in 1972, before that coastal act was passed. They should have had a coastal development permit, and there was some regional commission or something that issued CDPs. But I mean, how do you? We can't prove that a structure did or didn't have a permit. Record keeping was not good enough.
That's splitting hairs, yeah, in my opinion. I guess I was thinking pre-existing would be much.
Well,
Right now.
some.
Yeah.
That is an ongoing debate. Absolutely. And I think some cities have taken the position that it's any existing structure. The Coastal Commission definitely is not going to take.
But they're not clear exactly on what the date is for the stance they will take.
That's correct.
But it's within a few years.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
Yeah, yes, early September, yeah.
All right.
So that means that they wouldn't consider it a pre-existing structure, even if it had, it's developed under a CDP certified by the Coastal Commission any time since then.
Yeah, and I think that's why they've, I don't know when they started, requiring these conditions, agreements to not allow shoreline protection, but now when they issue CDPs, or to sign something that says you're not gonna build shoreline protection, and so. But there's still this span of time of things built between, 70s and 80s that don't have those conditions.
Yeah, which I imagine is a lot. Structures.
Yeah.
A lot happening. Stuff. Well, it sounds like we don't have that much flexibility.
Well, I think that's a question for the Coastal Commission, and I think, and I guess it depends on, how much the city wants to push on things. If there are particular things that you feel strongly about, we could certainly push on them and see what the Coastal Commission has to say, but I think that's why safety elements aren't getting certified, because cities and Coastal Commission can't to agreement on something.
Is this issue something that would warrant the conversation with Mike Wilson?
Eventually, potentially, yeah.
I mean, I just feel like every time we have this discussion, it's like the Coastal Commission staff is just, I don't know where they're at. I know that they're probably busy with the day-to-day stuff, but we're never gonna get a general plan done based on the policies that they have in place right now. If they want the entire general plan and ordinances all at once, never gonna happen. And it's gonna be an iterative thing that's gonna continue forever and ever.
Well, and I also, I'm finding that it can really depend on who you talk to at the staff. I mean, our primary, the supervising planner, coastal analyst, at the North Coast office, she's definitely takes a harder line, I think, than some others. So maybe it's worth, there's other people in the office.
Well, it would be nice at least to see if we could get additional clarity.
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying if Wilson could help, I know.
And I've seen that Coastal Commission doesn't always agree with staff.
Of course, yes.
And sometimes it's, more strict, less strict. I mean, it goes for what we see.
But it lives through more than one lead in the local office, so.
Yes, yes, and the current manager is much different than the old one.
They'll change again.
Else?
We're done.
Do you have what your?
Yeah, it sounds like we're done until we hear back from the Coastal Commission.
We don't need, if they like revise those maps a little bit, it's no reason we need to double check.
We'll just break real quick for any public comment. I see we still have one person online. Jumping to the screen. All right, go back to us. Right. That is the end of our official agenda items. Commissioner reports. Anybody have any reports to make? Do you think they would ever have any reports to make at this point? There's somebody still on the Trails Committee, right?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
But
Did they officially?
I don't think Trails got dissolved. Water Advisory did.
I mean,
I don't know.
I haven't heard a peep about it.
Can you look into that, Anton, and let us know?
Yes,
Because that would be, I think, the only.
I think it happened at the last council meeting.
Yeah, it did.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, they just said. It is, man, it's been erratic, you know, they were looking to assign a new council person to it. He said. But me, you know, so they just, okay.
Wow, that would be a fun committee to be in.
They said the city council was gonna take on all the trail issues.
Okay, well,
Well, I mean, I think the trails.
I think that's not an obvious choice, yeah.
It's been not really that effective, I guess. I mean, not many, it's very poorly attended,
Yeah.
even by the chair people.
I was on it briefly before I went to the, yeah, it's a.
Well, and there's probably,
Hands on them power.
if they had some focused things to work on. I mean, for a while they were working on the trails policy, but then there was confusion about what the intent of the trails policy was. And I thought we were close to finishing that, but
See, who's going to do signage?
Yeah. So with that, then, is that the last?
that's
Yeah.
right. There was that whole
The
signage.
trail signage.
But that would have been the last.
Circles.
Commissioner.
We do circles in Trinidad.
Planning Commission, I think that was the only remaining committee that any commissioners were appointed to that I can recall, right? There was WAC Trails. Was there ever anything else, Richard?
STR.
STR dissolved, WAC dissolved, the trails went away. I think those were really it, right?
I believe so.
Okay. Not to say somebody might have something clever to report unrelated at some point, but. All right.
I think we appointed 2 people to committees. This is Jane. Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, neither. We can look into that and see.
In the past, you have talked about assigning someone to attend city council meetings and report back on council meeting. Council's also talked about appointing someone to attend.
Chris,
planning
nominate
commission.
Chris.
Yeah, it was pleaded. All right, we can think
I
about
think
that.
it'd be more effective for the council to have.
Yeah.
Or at least the
I think they have a designated liaison. I thought they used to. I thought
Yeah, and that's true. Joe's usually here now.
Yeah, so I think we're, okay. That took longer than necessary, but I'm glad we figured out maybe another official solution of the possibility. Staff report, Trevor, anything for us? What's coming down the pike?
There's no pending applications, so that's quiet.
Wow.
I need to continue down the path of possibility of annexation and those water applications and sort of figure out. I've kind of been working on next steps and what things would cost and looking more specifically at the LAFCO process and what we need to do. So and I need to talk to Joe about the city sharing some of those costs if we're gonna pursue annexation. I think it's two property owners. And then,
There's a specific request or there's a specific interest to be annexed?
well, they want water, and
Got
LAFCO is saying if they want water, we have to pursue annexation, at least looking at the feasibility.
Gotcha, okay, you're
So
talking,
they have to make a finding that if they approve it without annexation, they have to make a finding that annexation is not practical. But because it's in the sphere, they're in the sphere of influence, they've already kind of determined that it is practical in a sense. So we'd have to justify that it's, the neighborhood doesn't want it, it's too expensive, it's whatever it is to not do it.
that would all be council level though at this point, right? To make those determinations and
Yes, it would eventually come to the planning commission for pre-zoning and CEQA.
But not until the city first made that determination, so we don't, okay.
So I'm working on that. Like I said, I'm working on an LCP grant amendment. Unfortunately, we can't get more money. But like I said, are sort of refining what we're gonna do with the money and extend it. It ended the end of this year. I'm gonna try and extend it to the end of next year. Give us a little bit more time. Give us a permission. Other than that, working on trails issues, the Ancestral Society appealed the decision on the Axel Lindgren Trail. The city rejected the appeal because they did not submit public comments to the planning commission. So it's now in the Coastal Commission appeal.
So did they go ahead and fix the bottom of the?
No. So, I mean, Joe was working with our CAA on a contract. There's still a few more details to work out. He's out of town this week. His goal is to have it done by July 4th. But it's going to be tight. The appeal was submitted right in literally the last minute, the end of the 10-day appeal period, and it took us a little while to kind of make that determination to reject the appeal. So the Coastal Commission appeal period didn't start until Monday, and so we'll end the 30th.
It almost sounded like Joe and Bryce were just gonna go down and drag that stuff down there and do it.
No. Bryce might want to do that, but no, he wants to hire a licensed, contractor. Now they could start, they could get under contract with RCA and have RCA start building the steps in the meantime. Yeah. And we are, Coastal Commission did request a meeting with city staff and the Ancestral Society, so I think we're going to do that July 1st. Regardless of what happens.
Are you going to be involved in, I believe that in July, the city council is going to hold another hearing on a feasibility study for the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District pipeline?
I mean, I have not been directly involved, no.
Okay.
Although I would support, at least part of the study to get more information.
And then the joint meeting, we talked about, we put a request to the city to get you more support, and you thought that I know the budgetary cycle is practically concluded, I think. Is that something they were able to do?
I mean, I don't know exactly what's happening with staffing at the city level, but I think Anton's gonna work on taking over the OWTS program, at least from what Jennifer was doing, and hopefully maybe I can hand off more of that responsibility. And the city now has a color printer, so they can print the packets.
So have you agreed to doing this? I think I've been told to.
The proper term is volunteer.
Well,
That's what I use it first.
towards it, and that means I have to have the packets done early enough to give me time to do them. But
Also, we talked about you having the ability to flex and use more planning staff internally.
yes.
Did they get support of that authorization?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know exactly what the budget looks like, but yeah, and we do have some staff. So like, for example, if the city wants to move forward with annexation, I've got some. And then I have someone working on my zoning ordinance.
All right, any future agenda items? Any discussion there? They just hang out there? All right.
If you're not careful, get in canceling a meeting in July.
But I guess we should Summer is sometimes difficult. Is anybody know they're not gonna be at a July or August?
As far as I know, I'm here.
July, nope. Not be here. Guess. July and August, I'm slated to miss both of those because I'll be at work both those days. I have a new fire chief, so I need to submit my request now to be able to attend remotely and see if they'll do that, which would then replace you as I would try and chair remotely because I would potentially have to get up and leave at any moment. But
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
would at least allow me to participate.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. During COVID, we did that quite. It was kind of nice, quite effective. So I'll work on that.
And I might get tied into a construction project in August.
But do we have anything that would be meaningful to meet on in July? I guess yes, maybe the question.
Yeah,
That's pretty, yeah, slow.
Well,
If you want to think about it, get back to us.
I at this level, yeah, I mean, there maybe not. I mean, we could potentially back up to something like, can we incorporate the design guidelines through policies? That might be something we could look at, but I'll sort of also have to see how my workload is with some of the other things going on. So, yeah.
Take a look, maybe send me on, see what you get a sense. Okay. All right, with that, then we are adjourned.